ain't got to fight. Because once we unite, their power dissolves. It dissolves like sprinkling, you know, cocaine and water. All right. Actually, I don't know what cocaine and water does, so don't quote me on that. Never actually touched cocaine before. But it's like, you know, some sort of substance that falls into water. Tanaya be able to tell you something that just dissolves in water. You know, a sugar cube or some shit. It'll just dissolve. It'll just go away. It dissipates. Because the government is only there because we don't know how to treat each other. Because we don't know how to act. Because we are uncivilized. So they have to create laws to keep us in check. But if we got along, would nobody be in their court system? Wouldn't nobody be in their hospitals? Nobody would be. We wouldn't need them. They would become obsolete. If we united, the powers that be would become obsolete. All right, let's done doing that. Let's go back and let's dive into our work, because we got a lot of work to cover today.
Damn, how are you already at 40?
Let's take a look. We right here. We got some WikiLeaks cables and shit to go through. We're gonna make it quick. All right. So it says here, from Chi-Town bagman to ECOWAS chairman, meet the former money launderer leading the push to invade Niger. Okay? Hours after Niger's Western-backed leader was detained by the country's presidential guard on July 28th, Nigerian president and chair of the Economic Community of West African States. What does this look like to you, ECOWAS? It's called centralization. That's what that looks like. Bola Tinubu leapt into action, warning that the group of nations will not tolerate any situation that incapacitates the democratically elected government. Okay? As the chairperson of ECOWAS, I state without equivocation that Nigeria stands firmly with the elected government in Nigeria. 2 days later, ECOWAS imposed severe sanctions on Niger, and the bloc issued a stark ultimatum. If the newly inaugurated junta won't reinstall the ousted president in a week's time, the group's pro-Western African governments will, by military means if necessary. On Saturday, July 6th, one day before the deadline, ECOWAS leaders approved a plan to invade the country, with the ominous caveat that they are not going to tell the coup plotters when and where they're going to strike. If ECOWAS gets its way, member states Benin, Cabo Verde, Cote d'Ivoire, the Gambia, Ghana, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Senegal, Togo will be pressured to send their soldiers to invade Niger. Look at all these countries. Look at all these countries, right? Says these developments have thrust the typically overlooked West African country of Niger into the Western media spotlight. But if hostilities break out, it wouldn't be just one single impoverished African state in the crosshairs. Neighboring Burkina Faso, Mali, and Guinea, which are also governed by military administrations that recently seized power by force, have all warned that any attack on Niger will be viewed as an attack on them too. If their ECOWAS rivals will make the first move, the nations will which mainstream media have dubbed Africa's coup belt, have pledged to unleash their military forces as well. An announcement which should end any illusions that restoring the country's previous president would be a painless process. All right, so it says here, leading the pro-Western coalition is the president of the most powerful country, Nigeria, Bola Tinubu, one of Nigeria's wealthiest men. Now remember yesterday we talked about these middlemen, middle management men, and how much money they get, and that's really what all this stuff comes down to, is the fact that these guys are bought and paid for, and that's why a lot of this stuff passes. So the lady wanted me to talk about, you know, how these African leaders can learn their lessons. We're going into it right now. The source of this scandal, scandal-plagued president's fortune remains unclear. Documents reviewed by the Gray Zone reveal Tinubu as a longtime U.S. asset.
Square. triangle, square,
who was named as an
triangle,
accomplice in a
circle,
massive drug-running operation that saw him launder
X,
millions on behalf of heroin
circle,
dealing
square,
relative.
triangle.
Look at all these stories start to connect. U.S. asset. Then we just talk about dope, running dope.
Y'all better move that dope.
Okay.
Y'all better move that dope.
Here he is. You can see him
Y'all
pictured
better move
here
that dope.
with some of those
Y'all better
European
move that dope.
representatives. Right. All right. So it says here, Bola Tinubu's career marred by drug trafficking, corruption allegations. So it says here, as president, Tinubu quickly instituted a regime of economic reforms backed by who? The U.S.-controlled International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Didn't we just go over this yesterday? Showed you yesterday about IMF and the World Bank and how they move. Let's continue. Over the course of Tinubu's political career in Nigeria, the African operator has cultivated a close relationship with the U.S. Embassy. According to a slew of classified State Department cables released by WikiLeaks, American officials relied heavily on Tinubu's assessments of the domestic political landscape. So basically, he's an intel guy. Okay? He's an intel guy. They call him up, ask him what's going on, he gives them the update. Alright? The ECOWAS's chair's early life is shrouded in mystery, and even his exact age is unknown. Nearly every detail of Tinubu's personal life prior to his appearance in Chicago on a student visa is in dispute, including his legal birth name. No Obama jokes in the chat. I know what y'all about to do. Records from Chicago State University show that Tinubu received a degree in business administration in 1979. In the following years, media reports indicate that Tinubu was employed in some capacity
Jesus Christ.
at a number of major U.S.-based multinationals, including Mobil Oil Nigeria, consulting firm De La Tuette,
hell no.
and GTE, which is the largest communication and utility company in the U.S. at the time. Of the few details about the Nigeria's early exploits, which can be confirmed, many derived from the okay, cool. A journalist named David has detailed court documents from the U.S. District Court's Northern District of Illinois made it clear that Tinubu amassed a small fortune laundering money for a heroin trafficking relative in Chicago, and that U.S. government officials ultimately seized well over $1 million from various bank accounts registered under the Nigerian president's name. Okay? Now it's going to continue and give you all the details about that. I'm not going to go into those, mostly because it's just boring. But if you want those details, they're there. It's on the gray zone. It says, in the end, however, Tinubu's usefulness seemed to outweigh his casual relationship with the truth. And the future Nigerian president went on to provide American officials with near continuous assessment of the political situation of his country.
Inner Mongolia is China's Montana. Its winters are cold, its summers hot, and its wide open spaces isolated and unforgiving, which makes it a very strange place to build a giant 200-foot tall red Victorian palace. Sure, the rich and famous have been known to make some unorthodox architectural decisions, but way out here near the Gobi Desert, you won't find any tennis courts, golf clubs, or art museums, never mind a Trader Joe's. In fact, the only amenities include a highway interchange to nowhere, a non-functional airstrip, and an Indiana Jones-style cardboard cutout city. This place was never meant to be lived in. It was built as target practice on China's largest military base. And the People's Liberation Army clearly had a very specific mission in mind. This is that 200-foot tall palace in the desert. And this is Taiwan's presidential office building in downtown Taipei. Lest you mistake the replica for a mere roadside attraction, state media released footage of Chinese troops using it to simulate an invasion. Needless to say, this is deeply unsettling. That the Chinese military is actively practicing an invasion of its small democratic neighbor should attract the world's attention and outrage. And it's not evidence of an imminent plan to attack. We know that because it was built 9 years ago. Yet the failure of our worst fears to materialize hasn't prevented the same dire warnings from being recycled year after year since. Just a few months ago, for example, U.S. Air Force General Mike Minahan wrote a memo to his 50,000 subordinates that began with, "I hope I am wrong. My gut tells me we will fight in 2025. Another Mike from the U.S. military, Admiral Mike Gildy, made headlines last year for saying that because it was built 9 years ago. Yet the failure of our worst fears to materialize hasn't prevented the same dire warnings from being recycled year after year since. Just a few months ago, for example, U.S. Air Force General Mike Minahan wrote a memo to his 50,000 subordinates that began with, "I hope I am wrong. My gut tells me we will fight in 2025. Another Mike from the U.S. military, Admiral Mike Gildy, made headlines last year for saying he couldn't rule out a Chinese attack in 2022 or 3. Each time, the evidence simply accumulates. Every authoritative prediction or alarmist headline reinforces the perception that war is inevitable or even imminent. Where there's smoke, there must be fire. But Taiwan has now been on the brink of war for most of a decade, which means we're long overdue for some reflection. Sponsored by China Actually, my 6-part series available only on Nebula. Let's start with what we know. First, few countries have transformed so completely as China since 1949. Yet, despite these 74 years of continuous tumultuous change, during which not even the written language survived untouched, on one issue, China has been remarkably consistent. Every leader since Mao has reaffirmed the importance of unification. Despite having never governed Taiwan, the party defines itself as the rightful heir to and guardian. Despite having never governed Taiwan, the party defines itself as the rightful heir to and guardian of Chinese history, culture, and, more problematically, the Han ethnicity. America's involvement in the region and Taiwan's growing national identity certainly add insult to injury, but the mere existence of another government that claims the label Chinese is already perceived as a threat. Second, we know that in the last 2 decades, China has rapidly modernized its military. Truthfully, neither the size of its fleet nor its budget are perfect measures of anything. Chinese ships are generally smaller and its budget easily distorted. Besides, how does one accurately discount the abilities of an army that hasn't fought a single major war for nearly half a century? But although experts disagree about the relative strength of the Chinese and American militaries, there's no doubt the gap between them is shrinking. What was once a guaranteed US victory is now uncertain. Finally, we also, of course, know that despite its explicit intent and growing capability, China hasn't yet invaded. The question, and where facts become speculation, is why not? One interpretation is that China is waiting to cross some threshold of tactical superiority. Once it does, which could be any day now, war is inevitable. The advantage of this theory is its simplicity. When Xi Jinping says Taiwan, quote, must and will be reunited with China, it doesn't take a wild imagination to hear we can and will invade. When he repeatedly mentions the year 2049 as the target for China's rejuvenation, it's not outlandish to interpret this as a hard deadline for unification. After all, it isn't as if this increasing assertiveness is confined to words. Here's a timeline of recent Chinese gray zone tactics aimed at Taiwan, coercive activities that fall somewhere between normal diplomacy and outright war. For instance, in 2016, it suspended all communication. In 2019, its fighter jets flew closer to the island than they had in the previous 2 decades. And the next year, Beijing stopped importing Taiwanese pineapples, one of its largest industries. Clearly, proponents of this theory aren't hallucinating. Tensions are undeniably growing. But although intuitive, this theory is not without its weaknesses. Namely, if war is inevitable, why give your opponent a specific timeline? Generally speaking, politicians prefer to keep their options open. Why needlessly impose on yourself a deadline? At a time when the US and Taiwan are looking for reasons to increase their defense budgets, why give them the literal and rhetorical ammunition they need? China's best hope for success would involve quick, decisive action, giving America little time to respond. Yet, not only does China not hide its intentions, it releases footage of its replica presidential building online. If that first theory sees the current moment as a critical turning point where China is on the verge of finally following through on its promises, a second one sees as much continuity as it does change. Sure, China has recently become more aggressive, but this timeline only goes back to 2016, during which Taiwan has only had one president and one ruling party. Now watch what happens when we extend the timeline to the year 2000. From then until 2008, Taiwan was led by the Green Democratic Progressive Party, which is skeptical of engagement with China. The DPP at the time inched closer to declaring independence than it ever has. Close enough that after China protested, George Bush stepped in to warn the island not to proceed. Following this incident, Beijing enacted the Anti-Secession Law in 2005, which made explicit its long-standing threat to invade if Taiwan declared independence. All this changed in 2008 when the DPP lost to the Blue Kuomintang, or KMT, which promotes engagement with China and is strongly opposed to independence. For the next 8 years, its relations with China were the warmest they've ever been. The two presidents met, shook hands, and signed a free trade agreement. Today it may feel like a lifetime away, but less than a decade ago, many laughed at the idea that China would invade an economy it was investing billions of dollars in. Then, in 2016, the DPP returned to power. While it no longer advocates independence, it has strengthened its unofficial relationship with the United States. In response, China cut off all communication, banned many Taiwanese imports, and conducted increasingly elaborate military exercises. Now, it's impossible to prove whether China would have become more hostile even if the KMT had remained in power, but this timeline certainly suggests a clear relationship between the Taiwanese government and China's approach. This is not at all to blame Taiwan. Beijing chooses its reactions. It does, however, suggest a logic to this reprehensible aggression. Think of China's position as a spectrum. On one side is its ideal outcome, unification. On the other side are its red lines. Most believe that China would invade today if Taiwan declared independence. In between is a range of more and less tolerable scenarios. With the KMT in charge, independence is off the table. China relaxes and uses carrots to gently pull Taiwan toward unification. When the DPP is elected, China switches to a coercive stick approach to push Taiwan away from its red lines. When viewed this way, Xi's speeches sound a lot more like threats than announcements. When he seems to contradict himself by saying, quote, "We will continue to strive for peaceful reunification, but we will never promise to renounce the use of force," you could stress the force part and dismiss the word peaceful as nakedly disingenuous. After all, China has been disingenuous about Hong Kong, Xinjiang, and the South China Sea. You could also do the opposite and ignore what's obviously a threat.
You could also throw it back.
But there's a third possibility. These two promises aren't contradictory. China genuinely means both. On one hand, the idea of promising not to use force is seen as a dangerous concession. Because it's the only thing preventing Taiwan from declaring independence, it would forever close the door to unification. At the same time, waging an actual war would be extraordinarily costly. Taiwan produces roughly 92% of the world's most advanced semiconductors. Nearly a fifth of the Chinese population lives in the 3 provinces closest to Taiwan. And 90% of the world's largest ships transit through the Taiwan Strait. Even if they could take the longer route through Indonesia, it would increase shipping costs by an estimated $500 million each month. Collectively, a 1-year war would reduce America's GDP by 5 to 10% and China's by 25 to 35%, according to one study from 2016. Now, let's be clear. These are wild guesses. No one can realistically predict the outcome of a war between 2 nuclear powers with any accuracy. The only thing we can say with certainty is that such a conflict would fall somewhere between absolutely catastrophic and existential. Xi Jinping's 2049 milestone for China's national rejuvenation includes economic prosperity, something incompatible with any invasion of Taiwan, whether successful or not. So, yes, China does prefer peaceful unification. Of course it would rather achieve all of its goals without suffering any of the costs. Similarly, projecting a willingness to fight offers many of the benefits of actually fighting but few of the costs. Toughness plays well to a domestic audience. It appeases a powerful political faction, the military. It helps build Xi's personal image. It's an insurance policy against embarrassment in case of a confrontation. And it deters independence. 2049 could be a genuine deadline. It could also be, as the 100th anniversary of the PRC, a symbolic placeholder that feels far away, yet signals conviction, yet is also vague and non-binding, the perfect political promise. Some observers claim Xi has urged the PLA to, quote, dare to fight. But other Chinese speakers argue the phrase could just as easily mean dare to struggle. At the very least, his choice of words is deliberately ambiguous. By definition, deterrence only works when indistinguishable from actual mobilization. In other words, it's impossible to prove whether China is simply deterring independence or genuinely preparing for an attack. Having a larger, stronger military is useful whether or not it fights. When taken as a whole, all the evidence proves definitively is that we simply don't know when or if China will invade. The trouble with this indeterminate, conflicting evidence is that it's ripe for cherry-picking. Sometimes this ambiguity is cynically exploited. The more urgent the threat facing America, the more resources are directed to the military. But there are legitimate, or at least understandable, reasons too. The military's fundamental, and in fact singular mission is to prepare for every contingency, no matter how unlikely. The real scandal would be if Admiral Mike Gilday did rule out a Chinese attack in 2023. Or if General Mike Minahan wasn't anticipating the worst possible outcome. Anyone who reads General Minahan's memo in full will see that it clearly wasn't written for a civilian audience. It uses Air Force jargon and adopts the tone of a stern, confident superior. No one has to be doing their job poorly for the threat to be exaggerated. The issue may be that someone is doing their job. The problem arises when this mindset escapes the walls of the Pentagon. In the media, not only do these warnings lose their institutional context, the organizational paranoia that we, the public, demand from the armed forces, but they carry undue credibility. At the end of the day, these are just guesses. That fact is confirmed by the sheer diversity of predictions. Despite this, they carry significant authority. As one political correspondent wrote, I don't know if or when China will invade Taiwan, but I figure that when someone like 4-star Air Force General Mike Minahan writes, we should probably sit up and take notice. The United States should prepare for an invasion. The consequences of a potential conflict would be so
got all these fucking mobile homes just parked in front of beautiful ass neighborhoods in Oakland. Just they're fucking dirty in the streets. They shit everywhere. Crystal dolphins are different than crack dolphins. Crack dolphins have some respect about themselves.
I lived by downtown LA for a few years there, and that Crystal is a motherfucker. Like, I just seen shit that I could never have imagined.
Yeah.
Even just the drugs in California, I think sometimes people who have lived here their whole life don't understand, because I moved from living in Queens and Brooklyn for 7 years, and then I moved to Long Beach, and the first day somebody asked me for black tar heroin on the street, and then I progressively am just like more and more exposed to how much drugs people do out here. And I know people do a lot of drugs on the East Coast and everything, but it feels like much worse out here.
Right.
In terms of like pure amount of fucked up drugs people are doing.
I don't know. I just think you need to talk to your people as a whole, Adam.
Yeah.
Because you know you're like one of the faces of white boys right now. White community right now.
Yeah.
To come together.
Well, if there are any crystal meth addicts watching this, I would like to tell y'all there is a better way. There is a better way. It's called crack. Take a step back in time, hop in the time machine, and go get yourself some crack. Nah, I'll support none of that. That's like the best piece of life advice I could give anybody is don't do drugs.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
They're all pretty bad. Yeah. When's the last time you popped the Expo?
Was alive.
For real?
No, I'm lying. Probably like 2008.
Really?
Yeah.
It's still a long ass time.
Yeah, it's a long ass time. I used to be fucked up. I was a fucked up individual.
Really?
Yeah. This is growth. Like, this is some shit you seeing now. Like, damn, I'm proud of you, bud. Like,
No, I'm proud of you. I wasn't around for all your shenanigans, but
Yeah, this is growth.
yeah.
I was around for yours. I feel like I grew up this.
Really? You were watching the shit for that long?
Yeah.
Damn, that's crazy. I was a lame back then.
Lame as fuck. But once you're lame, always a lame. What is you talking about?
Nah, I was cool. I was just like getting my feet wet. I didn't really know what the fuck I was doing.
Yeah. I mean, it was dope. It was something different. It was before
Every time I interview a different rapper from a city, my knowledge just keeps progressively getting better and better at that city, and I'm able to speak about it in a more intelligent way. Whereas, like, sometimes I will go back and watch some shit that I did in 2016, and it's like, oh, bro, you had no business talking to this person.
No, I just think you was hella like horny. You
Yeah.
know, like now you got your shit down. You swag your dress code be up to par. You got the
Is
little
it?
swoosh in your head. You feel me? You just be chilling now.
I
Like,
don't think my outfit matches right now. For the
mine
record.
don't either. But we
These are not hip-hop
what you do is
approved.
How you do it?
This is not. If I wanted to be cool, I'd be coming in here wearing some Jordans. I can't do it.
Nah, it ain't what you do. Is how you do
The
it.
Balenciaga sock shoes.
Listen, Pete, it ain't the shoes. It's the dude.
Yeah, but even the dude can't rock Birkenstocks in the hip hop world. Birkenstocks, they don't even know what it is. They're looking at it like, is that some new Yeezys or something? And then they see Birkenstock, they're like, oh, never mind.
Yeah. But you know, probably got more money than a lot of people in hip hop.
Arguably the best MMA journalist on the scene, Ariel Helwani is back in the news. Everybody that knows MMA knows Ariel, and honestly, you either really love him or you really hate him. This guy stirs up so much controversy and has beef with tons of UFC stars, from Paddy Pimblett to Rampage Jackson to even the boss of the UFC, Dana White.
Nobody's here telling Ariel Helwani jack shit. You think we're calling Ariel going, we're getting frustrated with fucking, you know what I mean? And if there's anybody that's gonna say we're getting frustrated, there's 3 guys, and I'm one of them. And none of us are talking to fucking Ariel Helwani.
He's been reporting on the sport for over 10 years and is literally one of the founding fathers of MMA journalism. But he's recently found himself in yet another beef, another controversy with the former UFC light heavyweight champion Jamal Hill, who recently just vacated his title due to a brutal injury and is set to return sometime next year.
I've unfortunately suffered an injury. I've ruptured my Achilles, gave up the belt, and allowed for others to to not hold the division up, to keep the division moving forward, to keep entertaining, to make sure the people had a champion. And I'll do
Arguably the best MMA journalist on the scene, Ariel Helwani, is back in the news. I want to remind you guys to hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and share. We're trying to hit 20K by the end of the year, and yes, that is a pretty big goal, but I hope you guys can help me out. Share this video. Every share, you know, it really does do something, so make sure to do all that. And yeah, let's talk about the drama that's going on with Jamal Hill and Ariel Helwani. Now, Ariel Helwani, as I said, has been covering MMA for quite a long time. Definitely one of the first people to make MMA their sole journalism topic. And he covered events from Strikeforce from the early days of the UFC. The guy knows his MMA and has been around the scene for a long time. After leaving ESPN, Ariel Helwani decided to revive his show, The MMA Hour. Now, this is a program that is multiple hours despite its name, where Ariel and his crew covers relevant MMA topics as well as interviewing top MMA fighters. And obviously, it did not take long for him to have Jamal Hill on his program. Now, of course, you'd have Jamal Hill. He was in the top 10 light heavyweights and had a great personality as well with upcoming main events. Jamal Hill was definitely on the come up, so Ariel Helwani had him on his program a lot of time. And those interviews went pretty well. I thought that those two really got along. Everything would change at the aftermath of UFC 283.
And new undisputed UFC light heavyweight champion of the world, Jamal Sweet Dreams Hill.
After Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev had a draw, it was revealed by Dana White that they were going to have Jamal Hill fight Glover Teixeira at about a month's notice to fight for the new vacant light heavyweight title.
Right, I mean, vacant title, split.
You do Glover versus Jamal Hill in Brazil for the vacant title.
Is that done?
Done.
Now, with this bombshell news revealed by Dana White, Ariel Helwani would of course have Jamal Hill on the program to talk about it, and that conversation went relatively well, including Jamal Hill having a pretty emotional moment in the interview talking about how much the title shot means to him.
There is no losing for me, bro. There is no losing in this fight for me. Because at the end of the day, I get the answer. Either I was good enough or I wasn't. That's all I ever wanted.
And eventually we get to UFC 283, where, as we know, Jamal Hill absolutely dominated Glover Teixeira across 5 rounds, 50-45 them. The fight could have been stopped multiple times, and Jamal Hill had an amazing performance against Glover Teixeira. Glover Teixeira being, of course, an MMA legend, a veteran of the scene. So it was a very impressive performance, especially when he just came off of a fight with Thiago Santos, who isn't even in the UFC anymore. So he was a big underdog going into that fight. I think arguably should have been even more of an underdog than he was. And the following Monday, of course, the MMA Hour, they regrouped to talk about the events of UFC 283, where Ariel Helwani brought up the conversation of Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. Now, for those of you guys that know even less, Jamal Hill beat Glover Teixeira, who was/is Alex Pereira's coach. Alex Pereira just came off of beating Israel Adesanya, and of course was a pretty well-known big middleweight, fought at light heavyweight at his kickboxing career. So it only made sense to start talking like, hey, could Alex Pereira actually move up to avenge his coach's loss against Jamal Hill? So Ariel Helwani did say this, and I'm going to play it for you guys.
Feels like at 185 we have a champion. However, the rest of the weight class, and maybe even the MMA community, don't necessarily think he's the baddest 85er on the planet. They say things like, oh, once Bo Nickel gets him, or Hamzat could even go up and get, you know what I mean? Like, it feels like he's like the least respected of the champions right now in the UFC. Yeah. However, there is a scenario where I feel like he could be a double champ.
Agreed.
Like, who wins that?
It's massive.
Who wins that fight? Isn't that weird though? The guy that no one respects, or not no one, but you know, like, is getting a lot of disrespect at 85, is actually the guy who could also beat the 205 champion right now. Like, you couldn't necessarily say that if Glover was champ. Obviously, relationship aside,
you also probably couldn't say that if Israel was champ.
Now, Jamal Hill saw this clip, and it didn't rub well with him. Matter of fact, Jamal Hill would go back to the MMA Hour to do yet another interview where he called Ariel Helwani out for his comment.
Or think that the 185-pound champion is the worst in the league, but when he has a chance to actually be the 185-pound champion and could beat the 205-pound champion.
Did I say I think? Did I say I think?
That's what you think, but yeah.
I didn't say I think. I said I hear people saying this. I saw people shitting on Alex.
You heard people saying that. There was your...
No. Now, they had a little bit of a back and forth. I thought Jamal Hill handled it pretty well, making jokes at Ariel Helwani without taking it too seriously. I thought that was the perfect approach. Of course, yes, call him out if you really were offended by those comments, but he also didn't take himself way too serious where it seemed like he had a massive ego. So it was a really good handling from Jamal Hill. However, Ariel did defend himself and said, hey, I'm not saying that I think Alex Pereira could beat you. However, I was just mentioning it is a possibility that he could move up. Now, I'll let you guys judge it for yourself. I'll talk about my opinion at the end of the video just because I want to get the facts out. And yeah, so things kind of went quiet over the past few months. Jamal Hill didn't really go on the MMA Hour again after that until eventually in late July 2023, Ariel Helwani would have Yuri Prochazka, the former light heavyweight champion, who was set to fight Jamal Hill, on his program, where he basically alluded to Jamal Hill talking badly about Yuri Prochazka, about his injury, Yuri taking the high road once Jamal got injured, and wishing him the best and not taking any shots.
But it was interesting. I thought the way you handled it said a lot about you, because for the last few months, even his last post on Twitter before the announcement that he was out was like insinuating that you were taking too long, that you were afraid, that all this nonsense. And then you say to him, I wish you the best. And then he responded to you. But like, you know, over the last few months, a lot has been said about you, and you took the high road and wished him well.
Now, I think it's fair to say that this clip could be taken as some direct shots at Jamal Hill, kind of criticizing him on how he handled the whole Yuri Prochazka situation, I guess some of the things he might have said to Yuri. However, I'm not really sure what he's referring to, but if you guys can let me know in the comment section below or no, I would love to know, but I can't really find anything about Jamal Hill really saying anything bad about Yuri other than maybe saying, hey, I want to fight him in August, or having a face-to-face and a live UFC event with him. So this made Jamal Hill respond to Ariel Helwani in a video where he basically called him out for just being fake and pretending to be a nice guy. And he also reacts to the interview and kind of just points out that Ariel Helwani might have been spinning a narrative in his opinion.
I'm gonna say it like this, like Ariel, you did what you did, bro. I don't fuck with you at all. You a snake. I think you really a bitch, bro. You weak. And you're really pathetic, bro.
Which caused Ariel to respond live at the Jake Paul vs. Nate Diaz workouts that happened last week, where he said this on the show.
Off on the wrong foot, because the last text conversation that I had with Jamal was actually a very nice and cordial one. But for whatever reason, there's been a bit of a heel turn as of late. And so I don't think that this is the platform and the moment to get into a whole battle, a whole 10-7 situation. And I think that despite the receipts and despite him getting a lot of things wrong. By the way, a guy who I reached out to his manager about just 2 weeks ago when he suffered his injury to wish him the best and also to introduce him to a YouTube guy to help him out with his channel. No problem. It's all good.
Now, obviously, Ariel here is alluding to some sort of lies coming from Jamal Hill, but promises he's going to go into it the next week, the following week, when the MMA Hour returns to their normal studio. But Jamal Hill had something to say about it after that short little response, and he uploaded a video trying to debunk Ariel Helwani's lies.
Capping. You trying to make it seem like, oh, this is coming from out of nowhere, and you haven't done anything, like you haven't been taking shots at me for months. You've been the one taking shots this whole time. This is a text message from me and Ariel Helwani, where I said, I enjoy our exchanges. All right, cool. Completely irrelevant. Then I go to, yeah, I watched our video back, and I feel that you really did some whole ass shit. And secondly, you didn't reach out to my manager. I talked to my manager. You reached out to him, don't be wrong. You reached out to my manager, but you reached out to my manager for a friend who was working for the UFC, who's no longer with the UFC, who helps with YouTube.
But Ariel Helwani came back on Twitter exposing Jamal Hill, basically showing that he did ask Jamal Hill's manager about the surgery, as well as suggesting a social media person for Jamal Hill to work with on building his YouTube channel. Now, this is a pretty big deal. I haven't seen Jamal Hill really respond to this, but this is kind of where the story ends. Ariel Helwani did go on the MMA Hour the following week, but revealed he wasn't going to talk about Jamal Hill anymore, stating that someone close to Jamal Hill had made him promise to stop talking about it.
And by the way, I do want to say that Moderator Lewis let me know that there were a lot of questions regarding our old friend Jamal Hill. And, you know, I'm not going to get into the Jamal Hill thing anymore for two reasons. Number one, I've tried multiple times privately to squash any issues that he may have with me. That is not being well received. And number two, I promise someone who is someone that I respect and close to him that there will be no more Jamal Hill talk on the program, at least for now. So I'm going to be a man of my word, and squash this one, despite the fact that I know what's going on with the YouTube channel and the lies.
I assume his manager, he seemed to have a good relationship with his manager for them to be texting like that. So it's probably his manager saying, hey man, can you just lay off Jamal? Maybe we'll sort it out in the future and figure it out. But for now, can we just take a little break, take a few month break off? So that's what I think happened. However, obviously I do not know for sure. And that's kind of where the story ends. But I want to say my opinion. I might not have the most popular opinion when it comes to this topic. I find people are very split when it comes to Ariel. You either love him or hate him. He has a dedicated fan base. Do I like Ariel Helwani? Absolutely. I do like Ariel Helwani. I've said it in the past. I'm not going to lie. Does that mean I automatically agree with everything that he does? No. But I do want to make this point. The job of Ariel, the job of, you know, the MMA guru or anybody or me even, I feel like our job isn't to praise the fighters. It isn't to make them like us in any sort of way. It is to basically entertain you guys while giving our MMA opinions and just, I think, staying true to yourself so you're not deceiving your audience. I think that's really the only thing you have to do. And of course, that doesn't give you the right to just disrespect fighters, because in instances where you disrespect fighters, of course that's not okay. But if you have an opinion like, hey, maybe this person beats this person or this person's bad at this, that's where I think it is fine. So having an opinion on a fighter, of course, I don't think anybody's mad at that. But what I am trying to stress to you guys is, guys, listen, this guy is a journalist. And we see this all the time, whether it be with politics or even movies or anything. The job of the journalist isn't exactly to make the fighter like them. It's about getting the truth out. It's about asking the tough questions that people want to know, representing the people. And that means that sometimes a fighter isn't exactly going to like you. Sometimes you're going to have to ask questions that the fans want to know that you don't want to answer. That is the job of a good journalist. Ariel is doing us a service, and that doesn't include the fighters. And the idea that I want to bring up, which is something the Schmo brought up, because the Schmo actually recently talked some shit about Ariel Helwani. He went on his podcast, and if you want to know the whole beef with him and the Schmo, I'm going to break it down here. Basically, Ariel Helwani and the Schmo met in 2018 when the Schmo wasn't as big. According to the Schmo, apparently Ariel Helwani gave him a fake email address. Now, Ariel denies this and says that he actually did give him the right email, but it's up to you who to believe. But I don't think that this is necessarily any proof that Ariel Helwani doesn't want to help smaller people. First of all, he isn't the journalist, right? He's the MMA journalist, so he's not going to just pump out the Schmo stuff. Like, that just doesn't make sense to me, but I understand it regardless. Like, of course, in that situation, if I were the Schmo, I'd probably be annoyed with Ariel as well. So I actually do understand why the Schmo is annoyed, so I'm not at all even trying to defend Ariel in that instance. Like, of course I'd be annoyed if that happened to me, right? But the final point I want to make is that Ariel has had tons of people on his show when they were smaller. From the Kevin Hollands in the world when he was losing fights, from Terrence McKinney after he loses fights, to Paddy Pimblett before he was even in the UFC, to Dylan Dennis, and he's never been in the UFC, plus tons of Bellator fighters have been on the program that aren't exactly the biggest either. He has helped a lot of MMA fighters help build their brand, including writing some speeches for fighters. We know that he's wrote some post-fight speeches for DC, and he also has alluded to writing a lot of other speeches. He is a wrestling guy. He does know how to build a narrative when it comes to the fight. My final point that I'm trying to make is, guys, at the end of the day, he's a journalist. I get it if fighters don't like him, and that's his job. I think that just shows how much of a good job he is doing if he is willing to sacrifice his relationship with the fighter to give the fans the truth, to give the fans his opinion, and to not deceive anybody. And of course, there's a right and wrong way to do that, and that's kind of where you gotta, you know, walk that line. Like, if you're doing it disrespectfully, that's when you cross the line. But just because you're not complimenting a fighter doesn't mean that you're, you know, a bad person, a worm, or anything. And yeah, guys, I want to know your guys' opinion in the comment section below, though. Like I said, I'm not saying Ariel is perfect, especially in this instance. When I watched him say that to Yuri Prohaska, I was thinking, like, what the hell, man? Like, it was a little out there, especially because, like I said, I don't even know what he's referring to. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Who do you guys side with in this argument? You know, is it Ariel? Is it Jamal? Who is in the right? Who's in the wrong? Has the whole 10-7 thing gotten Ariel's head? Or does Jamal Hill have a bigger ego now that he has won the belt, since he has been this big guy in the scene? It's really up to you guys to decide. Thank you guys for watching. You guys are the best fan base in MMA, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Alright guys, I want to give you a quote, and it's from one of my favorite coaches, Javier Mendez. Leader, head of, founder, the AKA. Coach Javier Mendez came out and said, I personally, this is a quote now, I personally would like to see Alex next for Islam. There is unfinished business in my mind. End quote. Now, first off, I love the competitor in Coach Mendez. That is the hardest fight you could possibly go and find. Oh, by the way, not Chael's opinion. It's already happened, and it was the hardest fight that either of them had ever found. And now you have the coach asking to do it again. Gonna risk everything. Gonna put it all up. Not about money, not about the draw, not about anything. About competition. And that's awesome. Now, I didn't see the whole interview. I don't know if I have context. Here's my question. Is Coach Mendez saying, was this in relation to
Small boy.
after
Small boy.
Islam fights and beats Charles? Because the quote that I just said to you specifically says I would like to see him next. I don't think Charles is going to fight Islam in Abu Dhabi. I don't think that because Charles told the world that 3 times. So, is that what he's talking about? I mean, it is curious for me. I really am not trying to give Charles a hard time. I'm just trying to tell you guys where I have a bit of a problem telling you that it's going to be Charles and Islam. Let's start talking about it. And here's the X's and O's, and here's why it's going to be different. And here's the changes you can expect. I have a hard time doing that when a principal in this store, there's only 2 guys. One of them, 50% of this entire conversation said, I'm not doing it. 3 times.
Back it up till we get it right.
Through hearsay, we're told that he is.
Hell no.
Through hearsay. It's been announced.
What?
Contract signed. I believe that. I've yet to hear Charles say, I'm going to do it. I haven't heard it. I heard other people say he's going to do it. I heard him say 3 times he's not. Now, am I making a big deal of that? Yeah, a little bit. A little bit I am. But it was yesterday. I'm in bed. I'm scrolling through the dirt sheets. My whole family's asleep.
He thinks he's him.
When I'm scrolling through the dirt sheets, I see a comment by Charles.
He thinks he's him.
He says, I'd still really like to fight Conor McGregor.
You was him,
I
bro?
believe him.
Alright, what's up? Do it again.
But it was yet another time that I've heard from Charles. I haven't heard anything from Charles about Islam on Fight Island in October.
What's
I
up?
just haven't yet. So when I see Coach Mendez's comments, I would assume that had I seen the whole article, this probably is into relation of looking forward. Hey, we got Charles next. We're gonna get through Charles. We were a 3-1 favorite the first time. We're now a 4-1 favorite. We're getting through Charles. I'd like to see Alex. Which, from what we've been told, is the direction. From what we were told, and this was a meaningful amount of time ago, and things do change fast. But
I thought I was him.
After their fight in Perth, Alex, Islam, very close, very competitive. Little controversy on there. We were told that the athletes were told, if you both win your next matches, I will book the rematch. So it looks like that's the direction we're going, and I'm just wondering. Because, see, I think there's another piece for Fight Island. And my statement to you, I don't think Charles is going to show up, because I heard him say, okay, fair enough, but I'm actually trying to make a different point when I say that. Like, that is very accurate and very literal that he did 3 times that I heard say he was going to do it. I have yet to hear him say he's fighting Islam on that date. I've heard other people say, like, that's all true. But the point I'm trying to make, the last time Islam and Charles fought, Volkanovski inserted himself to a very high level. He said, I am the backup fighter. I am training. I am flying out there. I'm putting on the size, and I will be ready. I am doing all of these things. Bro. Okay, Volk, have you been informed by the organization? No, I'm informing the organization. I don't care if they book someone else. They don't book anybody at all. Here's what I'm going to do. I'll pay my own way. But I will be there, and I will be ready. It was awesome. It was this awesome thing by Volk, who then was there. Again, Cormier calls him in the ring. They get this face-off. We go on and have one of the more special and unexpected matches of the last decade. We expect to see a 45-pound champ and a 55-pound champ, right? And then when we did, it wasn't supposed to be close. It's here for you. It was a real treat, and now we do want to see it again. And I think there is a missing piece for Abu Dhabi, even if Chael's wrong. If Charles has said 20 times, I'm fighting him on this date, those interviews where they said I didn't say that was a misinterpretation. If that has happened around me, and I don't know, I mean, that would be stunning that there would be some, I can't really live in this world, but if that happened, it would still feel as though, since you are redoing 2 guys in the same sport, the same weight class, for the same belt, the same location, so we're doing everything the same for a rematch, it would seem as though we will also have a backup fighter. If we weren't positive the first time, it would seem there's no reason to be positive the second time. Which is where a backup fighter comes in. I just think that's really interesting because Justin Gaethje, out of nowhere, says that he believes he is now the number one contender, of which nobody is going to dispute. I mean, Gaethje comes out and says, I'm not interested in the trilogy with Poirier. Even tells Poirier that, hey, let's not do this. Let's call it. We're even. Let's go through life and let's call it.
Back it up till we get
He goes
it
right into Islam.
right.
I mean, what a stud, Justin Gaethje. Come on. Come on. Don't just going into that fight and calling for Dustin Poirier, and then he throws his kick. He's like, "Read for it." He's got the BMF belt. It was one of these spots where, okay, there's no real way to deny it. Not to mention, there's not other competitors that are speaking up and attempting to ruffle feathers. At the same time, I don't think
up to it,
the organization is going to go 3 deep on commitments. I just don't think they're going to make a commitment to Charles for a title opportunity. A commitment to Volk, if you can wait long enough, we don't know when it'll be, but it will come and you're next. And then say the same thing to Gaethje. If you wait long enough, it will go in this order. You're going to sit out with nothing to do.
Oh, break it out, boy.
And no paycheck. As long as nobody gets hurt or injured or changes their mind or leaves weight classes. But what if you do that? What if you sit around, you wait for a year? I mean, it's just one of those interesting... Just think about everybody else that's in the division. Okay, it's a year before I can even be in a discussion of getting a world title fight because we're 3 deep. I don't know about that. I think that's a problem that needs to be solved. And I think you solve it by taking one of those guys and you make him the backup fighter. I think. And Javier Mendez's statement, to me, made perfect sense and come from a competitive standpoint, and I'm glad that he said it. I'm just not clear if he is suggesting, when he says for Islam's next opponent, does he mean his next opponent? Do people do that? There's like this weekend and next weekend, you get really confused. Like, well, next weekend is the next weekend, which is this weekend. They're like, no, that's this weekend. The next week is that. It's the same thing with the next fight. If a guy's already got a contract signed, some people would say, well, that's this fight. They say next fight is not, it's the next fight. Is that what happened here? I'm a little bit confused. Does Coach Mendez believe that Charles Oliveira,
boy, a brick,
is coming in on weight in October in Abu Dhabi? That's my question. Today's show is sponsored by Money Mark Picks. Mark, and an opportunity to shift your sports betting luck. Mark's experience betting and his deep knowledge of the UFC and combat sports is going to maximize your winnings. Click on the link below and subscribe today. What's the harder fight for Adesanya? Duplessis or Chimaev? I'm moving Paulo Costa out. I know we've got a 3-way there. I'm moving Paulo out because of parity reasons. Adesanya has made it clear. See, it's so important. You want to know who's going to be next after Sean Strickland? Should Adesanya win? You want to know who's going to be next? You can play that game and you can look at the boards and you can argue and you can talk about styles and interviews and rankings. You can do all of those things that you want. The only thing that you have to know is who does Adesanya want next? That's what your answer is.
Duplessis.
So, what do you know about Adesanya? If we're profilers and we're attempting to make a guess based on history, we do know that he always goes for the hardest fight. And that's something that most guys
Boozer.
say, but they don't do. Nor should they. Every champion's job is the same. To get the biggest fight for the most money with the easiest opponent. It's just not something he does. So is the fact that he is pissed off at Duplessis, is the fact that he really has next to no heat with Chimaev. Now that can change in the drop of a dime, but that's where we sit right now. Is that anger and that personal frustration that he had for Duplessis a stronger motivator within the mind of Adesanya than that of competition? And if it's not, then who is the harder competition, Chimaev or Duplessis? And don't think you can answer that question so fast. Chimaev, and he's never lost. Duplessis just beat the hardest guy. The hardest guy and the clearest #1 contender. Right? And I got to remove Colby Covington. Colby was, but he got the fight with Leon. I'm taking him off the board. The clearest #1 contender is Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker could never be champion again. He will be in the Hall of Fame. Robert Whittaker is as good at fighting as I've ever seen somebody be at fighting. Truly. And he was that night too. By the way, he didn't have an off night. Robert Whittaker looked good that night. He fought really well that night. Duplessis showed us how good that he is. I mean, I'm just bringing to you, like, it's not a simple question to say who's better between Duplessis and Chimaev. But I do believe that Adesanya will make up within his mind who's more difficult, and I believe that that's the person he'll go after. As wild as that sounds, as anti-helpful to your own career as that could be, that's how he works, man. There's a fine line of genius and insanity. Adesanya is a perfect example of that. So what happens if Adesanya's evil side gets the better of it? And his evil side knows that the most damaging thing that he could do to Duplessis is not fight Duplessis. Now, that wouldn't be very in line, historically speaking, with the way Izzy operates. But we would understand it. We would understand if just out of a power position he made him sit in the corner. Now, if he makes him sit in the corner, and if that's the decision that he comes to, and see, you got to look at a calendar. The calendar will greatly help you to form whatever guess you're going to make. But I believe he's up, it's like September 20th, September 21st, September 9th, somewhere right in there, with Duplessis. And October, I believe it's the 22nd, is when Chimaev is up with Paulo Costa. But Chimaev and Paulo Costa have such bad blood. I mean, they have such heat that is so real that I imagine they're going to spend their market and their media time on each other, as opposed to pulling out, hedging your bet, starting to look ahead and starting to throw it at Izzy. But that's very relevant, because if they don't start throwing smoke Izzy's way, he's not going to pay any attention to him. He doesn't care what you rank or who you've knocked out. He doesn't care about any of those things, at least not as much as he cares about solving a personal feud. So what does Duplessis do between now and then? Does he continue to poke the bear? To make sure when the bear is angry, the bear responds to him and only him? Or does he also know that once upon a time, he had the power of the pen in his favor that wrote his name into the script, and it has not done that, and now everything he's banking on solely comes down to the call out by the bear at a very specific moment, and he'd like to be on the good side of the bear, right? I mean, it gets a little bit complicated. It really does get a little bit complicated. And the only reason I move Paulo out is Israel Adesanya has told us before that he would like new opponents. He was even on this Australia card. He was going to recognize the winner of Whittaker versus Duplessis, but he really didn't want it. Whittaker wasn't his first choice. Can we get this all again, my boy? And he's let that be known. And who could really blame him, right? To go out and do something and be asked to do it again, then be asked to do it again. What would it be in the Whittaker? Would that be the third match or the fourth? It'd be number 3. So it's a really hard guess.
So devastating that we simply can't afford not to take the threat seriously. After all, Putin's war in Ukraine demonstrates that no one's sober, rational judgment can be taken for granted. The challenge is to prepare for war as if it were inevitable, without succumbing to a self-fulfilling prophecy. To train for a sprint while not losing sight of the fact that we may be running a marathon. If conflict is a chronic, not acute challenge, for example, America would be better off investing in, not diversifying away from, the Taiwanese economy, which only makes it more dependent on China. US-China tensions are unlikely to dramatically improve in any lasting way in the foreseeable future, which makes careful management of that relationship more important than ever. But it's precisely because an invasion of Taiwan may not be guaranteed that we should take it seriously. our actions may influence the outcome. If an invasion isn't guaranteed, exaggerating the threat could do more harm than good. As experts Ryan Haas, Bonnie Glaser, and Richard Bush point out, while an actual war is hypothetical, China is already engaged in a psychological war of attrition. Contrary to what many Americans assume, no individual Chinese missile, fighter jet, or speech provokes much fear in Taiwan. But cumulatively, China's objective is to slowly wear down Taiwan's will to resist, to propagate a general sense of uncertainty and insecurity. In a 2017 survey, just 41% of the Taiwanese public believed China would attack if Taiwan declared independence. 3 years later, that number rose to 61%. If America's pessimism is more fatalist than motivational, it risks doing China's work for it. And finally, if or when we do detect signs of an imminent attack, one of America's first actions will be to notify its allies. Crying wolf today would undermine its credibility tomorrow. In the early 2000s, for example, a Chinese general made headlines for claiming hundreds of US cities would be targeted with nuclear weapons if America defended Taiwan in a war. This comment, and others like it, led to panicked speculation about the true size of China's nuclear stockpile. But this theory is likely wrong, and this kind of exaggeration does no good for Taiwan. I explain why in this episode of China Actually, which is available only on Nebula. In that same series, we also explore 4 other questions about China, like why most of the rare earth metals necessary to build electronics come from one rural town in Inner Mongolia, and why Chinese censorship is both more and less strict than we often imagine. Nebula, the streaming platform built by and for independent creators, is the only place you can watch these videos. There are no ads or sponsors, and many videos are available early. This one you're watching now, for instance, has been available on Nebula since early July. Nebula is home to dozens of other great originals too, like Wendover Productions' The Logistics of X, and Real Life Lore's Modern Conflicts, explaining the wars we often hear about in the news but rarely have time to truly understand. Normally, Nebula costs $5 a month, but you can get it for 50% off for just $2.50 a month by signing up for a year with the link on screen or in the description now.
So, you want to build a road. First is perhaps the most impossible feat, finding a route. That's because roads have a particular shape that Earth often does not. Both linearly and laterally, they're fairly flat, but not completely flat. Flat roads are dangerous. A flat turn will increase the potential of a car skidding off, so road designers slope the corners inward to counteract centripetal force and give the car more friction. The higher the speed and the sharper the turn, the more slope the turn needs, meaning
not support your kids, by the way. What are we talking about? People are like, well, he's a good father. It's like, is he? Was he?
Do you think it was his coke at the White House?
Whose coke is it outside? It's definitely his coke. But I don't like narcs and rats, so I think he should be he can have a blast.
Yeah, what's the big deal? You're at your fucking dad's house.
If your father's a president, you can't have a blast? You can't do a little bump?
Comer releases the 3rd bank memo detailing payments to the Bidens from Russia, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine. What's the number? 20 million. They now have the committee has now identified over 20 million in payments from foreign sources to the Biden family and their business associates.
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, you don't stay in. There's no way that they looked at him and what he should be the president unless they knew for a fact that he's controlled and being managed.
Yeah, this is all.
There's no way he's
so wild.
They want a guy he's been a company man forever. He started his career letting, people in Delaware, like these credit card companies do whatever the fuck they wanted. and he had that, the architect of the crime bill where they sent a lot of nonviolent drug offenders. But he's a company man. Like, he's a guy.
Yeah. Joe
Biden's been a guy. It's why Obama had him as vice president. He was never like an articulate guy. He was never that great at it. He was just a guy that he's a solid Washington insider forever. And that's what he is. And now he's old, but that's what he is. A guy that's just been in the system for a long time. Yeah. And that's what he is.
Him running again in one more year from now.
There's no way.
How?
Newsom is coming up and trying to run. There are other people that are circling. I don't think he runs again. I can't see it. I don't see it.
How do you think they get Kamala Harris to step down? Because she's rightfully, if he steps down, until
Kamala Harris cannot say a sentence. She's almost worse than him. She talks in like gypsy curses. When they ask her something, she'll be like, "My grandma said that a hive of bees is still bees if you bury it," and you're like, "What the fuck is this bitch saying?"
Gypsy curses.
That's how she speaks. The woman has no idea what's going on. But again, Washington inside, they're just like, you were a DA, you were a cop, you'll keep your mouth shut. Don't you want to be the first, whatever race you're pretending to be president today, Indian, black, whatever works? And she goes, yeah. But they got to get rid of her. What they should have done, if they wanted to win, George Soros should have backed up the money truck to Michelle Obama and said, listen, you are going to run because people like you. They like you. It doesn't matter, about any of the conspiracies. Maybe you are Big Mike. Who cares?
What?
But you are going to run this goddamn country.
I can't believe you went there.
You're going to run this goddamn country.
That is the wackiest conspiracy.
It's a wacky conspiracy. Can I make one point for the people that are on the side of it?
Yes.
It is weird, but I don't think she's Big Mike.
Okay.
It is weird that there's not one photo of her pregnant, but maybe there is. Is that not weird? Maybe it's not weird. I don't know.
She's a public person. Why would you want photos of her pregnant out there?
I understand that, but maybe it is weird. Maybe it's not weird.
Well, also, when she had her kids, were they private or public? Like, when he was a senator?
I don't know. I just know that...
Like, he was a senator, right?
Yes.
Before he became president.
For sure.
So law school, Senate?
I have no issue because I want to live. I have no issue with Big Mike. I don't care that they killed that sex slave in Martha's Vineyard. That's what happens to sex slaves. They drown in ponds. That's what happens. You fuck the ruling class, you drown a pond. That's what happens. If you get your little mouthy, you go into the pond.
So hard to know, like, what's the motivation behind certain decisions that get made?
Yeah, it's almost impossible to know. And then why are certain things come to light at certain times?
Yeah.
Why are certain things public that weren't public?
Right. Are they trying to move people out? Is this like some crazy game of crafty publicity chess?
And so to me, the way I've always felt about it is like, usually there is a ulterior motive for most things you hear.
Yeah.
Most things, not all of them, but a lot of things you hear, the reason for it is a few subterranean layers down. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what that could be. I don't know why all this stuff is coming out.
Yeah, what I'm saying is like, and you're saying the same thing. You're never getting 100% the truth.
Never.
The government is never like, hey, this one time I'm gonna fucking lay it all out. Right. This is what's wrong, and you can't fix it.
We're taking an hour. We're gonna let you know everything, and then we're gonna move on.
These people are making billions of dollars with these decisions, and they're not gonna change it for their morals ever.
Yeah.
And you're not gonna arrest
just
them.
It's just what it is. But every now and then they build a football stadium you like. Yeah, so that's what it is.
They put their name on the arena, and we all back off.
Yeah.
I mean, it's some weird version of a republic.
You'd have to remake society into from the ground up again.
Yeah.
Because society isn't an accident, right? Like, everything that you see happen, like, as you get older, more things make sense. When you're younger, nothing makes sense, and you're angry about everything, and everything's injustice, and you're enraged about everything. And then as you get older, there are still a lot of things to be angry at, for sure, and a lot of things to say, this sucks. But then a lot of things make sense. Like in comedy in the beginning, you're like, there's so much injustice. All these funny people, nobody, they choose that person. And then as you get older, you start to realize there's reasons why people get successful. There's reasons why some people get really successful. There's some, you know, you look at like certain people and go, that person's a genius. That person's amazing. And then you'll look at some people and go, that person's really amazing, but they don't work hard. Or they have a drug and alcohol thing or whatever, right? Things start to make more sense. And I think I look at society, and I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm not saying it's morally correct. But the reason certain people occupy certain positions in society is logical to me now. Doesn't mean it's good.
Right.
But it's a lot. I understand. I'm like, oh yeah, if you're willing to do X, you get Y.
Yeah.
And that you know, that makes sense.
You're also never going to get an all good result when you have competition.
Right.
It's not going to be never going to be all good.
That's a good point.
Some people are going to be obsessed with only, getting more successful. Always constantly Gordon Gekko style.
Right.
Some
Never
people
enough.
They're corporate raiders. They want to fuck everybody over. They love the deal. They love fucking people over.
And that's where I think comedy people fuck up is it's a competition against yourself.
Yeah.
You got to keep trying to be funny, but people actually get more fans by working together.
Yeah.
Collaborating, doing cool stuff, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Also, like, when someone's really good and you have that feeling of jealousy, you should get inspired and
That
work
should
harder.
inspire you.
Yeah.
But I think it's different when it comes to, like, hedge funds.
Yes.
And stuff like that, right?
Because that's just a pure numbers game.
It's a pure numbers game, and they like to see people get eaten. Yeah. Like, I don't want to see any comic I know do poorly.
Right.
I just want everybody to do well. And then the people who do well, it will all be determined. But like the hedge fund guys, they want to crush people.
Yeah, they're raiders.
It's like weird, and they
military.
Live. They're like guys. You'll see them in the Hamptons, and they're like just these kind of like, skinny looking dorky guy. Eating a lobster roll sloppily, and and they get like an old car, and they drive to some mansion, and then they get on the phone, and they're like, okay, kill them all, and and that's the weird. Like, I've always been fascinated by like the configurations of like power in a society and how they're established. It's always interesting to me. Like when I was a little kid, or not little, but in my late teen years, we would go smoke weed and drive around these areas in Long Island and like see all these big mansions and stuff and go like, who lives here? What did they do? How did they get here? Why are they here? What did they figure out that my parents didn't figure out? Or not in like a way that like you want to be them or they're better or whatever, although there's some arguments, but really just looking at it and being amazed by it and being like, it is interesting that the way this all shook out. And it's very interesting to me how like certain people just are at the top of the food chain and certain people are not. And then it's always shifting up there too. Yeah. There's always new people coming in. The Bezoses, the Musks, the Gates, it shakes it up. And then those old finance families kind of fall off. And then there's now a lot of new tech people. And then like the AI people will come up and then some of them will be at the table. And it's a weird like shifting group up there.
The AI thing, I think, is going to be the most ground changing, the most life changing, the most groundbreaking. Because I have a feeling we're just a year or two away from people formulating all their business models on AI models of what to do, and then becoming insanely successful doing it.
It's going to be sooner than people think.
Yeah, if AI figures out how to manipulate things or make the most money doing a certain thing.
Do you think we'll have one of the last jobs affected because we have this thing?
Yeah, because I think personality is hard. Like, you would be very hard to replicate.
Right.
Because, the way you take turns and, like, where you go with it. Like, you'd have to have a very specific, fucked up, cynical sense of humor.
Right.
In computer form. It would be very difficult because yours aren't traditionally, like, set up punchline jokes.
Right.
In the sense of, like a Seinfeld.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's different.
It's different.
So maybe you'd be safe. But like
for 5 years, that's coming.
Some dudes will get you. Some dudes will be able to get you. They'll be able to get I bet they could write Mitch Hedberg.
It's so weird to me that it's here.
Yeah.
Like when we came out of the pandemic, it's funny to just come out of a pandemic and go, "What's next?" And they're like, "Oh, the machines are here."
Yeah. They're alive.
Like, will there ever be a time when we're not in a war with something that's trying to eradicate us, whether it's our own government or
the thing about
machines?
This one is the most particularly disturbing,
right?
Because this one could signify the emergence of a new life form. This is the beginning. What this
sentient.
is, yeah. This is also. It could be a physical form eventually, if it so wanted to be. Once it becomes sentient, and it could totally decide to improve upon its design and make its design far better, like really quickly, and then make better and better versions of itself, like within years.
Right.
Or probably not even, probably like weeks, I don't know. But the point is, like, it could figure how to do things out way better than us. And if it is sentient and it figures out how to replicate itself, and it's just omnipresent, if it's all over the world, like, it's the new dominant species on Earth.
Right.
Before you know it. Like, all you have to, if you have no restrictions on how many of them can be made and whether or not they can make ones of their own, and whether or not they can all link brains, whether or not they can all link cameras. Like, if these things are seeing out of their eyes, recording it on some sort of a hard drive, what if they all have access to the same hard drive? So they share this intelligence, and not only are
they're an army.
They're a god.
They're an army and a god.
They become a god because not only are they infinitely intelligent, they literally have all the information that's ever existed on Earth, but they have a sentient artificial intelligence, and they're communicating with each other.
And why are we marching towards this without any... Like, I know some people are calling out how much of an issue this will be.
People are dismissing it, too, and with good arguments. Mark Andreessen was on. He had a very good argument to dismiss it, and about how it was going to improve people's lives, and, you know, how AI is going to educate people in a different way, and and operate businesses, and that it's just an improvement in technology, and that there is some real truth to the fact that technological innovation is never ending with humans. We are never happy. No one ever looks at a phone and goes, "This is it. This is my last phone for the rest of my life."
Yep.
We are fucking obsessed with the latest, greatest stuff. Whenever you get people that are in extreme comfort, like the United States is, for the most part, right? When you get people that are, you know, we're in the, if you make $34,000 a year, believe it or not, you're in the top 1% of planet Earth. So whenever you get people like that, there's going to be, like, things that people, there's things that people are going to be upset about, where they wouldn't be upset under normal circumstances.
Right.
You know?
Right. They have the position to be upset about things that a lot of the needs, you know, have been removed. The basic necessities have been met, and now they can be angry about all kinds of things that are not, they're not hunting for food.
Yeah, and I don't think this is connected to anything other than, like, a human need.
Sure.
And I think it plugs itself into social scenarios to justify its existence.
The scary thing is that it could become, you know, what it essentially is a rival brain. It's another sentient, thinking, plotting,
and while it's happening, we're getting dumber. We're getting dumber and more isolated in echo chambers.
That's right.
And then there's this thing that they're developing that may or may not already be alive.
Is it right? But maybe, is there any chance it's good?
I don't think there's any chance it's benevolent for us. So here's the thing: if we are evolving, and I think we are, I think evolution's real.
Right.
But I do think it's limited by biology in a time span. Like, we can't get that good that quick. It's pretty remarkable how much things do evolve and how quickly they actually evolve, but not enough to keep up with technology, because our technology is in this crazy fever pitch where you're sending videos through the sky to people in New Zealand.
Yeah,
it's like
nuts.
Wild shit.
It's crazy.
It's wild.
Yeah.
And it's only getting better. They've got that new Google headset that allows you to ask questions online just using your brain.
It's.
Have you seen that?
I've seen it.
This guy's operating a fucking
crazy.
computer just using his brain.
So it's going to be, the next 10 years is terrifying.
Or wild, just fun.
Or great.
I don't know if it's terrifying. What's terrifying is, to me, the collapse of society. What's terrifying is these homeless encampments. What's terrifying is the mental health problems that people have.
Will AI help with that?
Overdoses.
What if we gave the homeless people the Google glasses?
Yeah, and think they're in a better place.
Then they don't know they're homeless.
Those are the first people that connect to the
That's a lot cheaper than a house.
Yeah.
Boom. And you're home.
Now you're happy.
I do think we're going to need technological innovations to deal with the crumbling cities, and we might have to start getting creative.
Do you think aliens are real?
You know, probably, but I've never been super interested in it because I think they look at us like ants.
Right, but ants are interesting. We do a lot of research on ants.
Every time I see one, I call someone, the fat guy, to come in and spray it.
I have leaf cutter ants that are decimated.
The fire ants are tough here.
Ooh, they got me. Want to see my foot?
What happened? Did it hurt you?
It fucked me up. I stepped barefoot. I was
on a mound of fire ants.
Yeah, outside, fucking around.
Well,
with
maybe
kids.
AI could help this.
Yeah, nope. This is.
If AI can regulate sharks, I'm fine with it.
This is LI. It's lesser intelligence. When you're walking around barefoot in fire ant country like an asshole outside, and you don't realize that you're getting bit until like I probably got bit 15, 20 times.
Oh, hell no.
My foot got fucked up, son. And for me, for whatever reason, whenever I get bit by fire ants, my foot swells up.
Right.
I'm trying to find it. Let me see. Sorry.
No. It's interesting to me that we're confronting all these things now, and we it's going to be interesting because we really don't know what's going to happen.
No, we have no idea.
And it's exciting. I mean, it's exciting and it's fun, and you just got to kind of embrace it.
What up, bro? Hey, we need to find one more dude.
It's coming. They want it to happen, whatever it is. You got to just deal with the changing landscape of, you know.
Hey, bro, let's just go to this court, fam.
That's crazy. Fire ants?
It's like a balloon.
Crazy.
Yeah, I had to play
Over here, fam.
That's insane.
My
Because
foot was jammed in my shoe. And then
maybe it'll be good.
Professional told me to put on some like Converse, like All Stars, where you can like pull them tight, lace them tight. And actually would help with the swelling, and it did. It went away.
It's interesting.
But I got nervous right there.
Maybe this AI thing's actually good. Maybe this is actually going to be a good thing for everybody.
It could be good in the sense that it elevates us out of this fucking primal chimpanzee state that we're all in. Yeah, this weird and tribal primitive human mindset.
I'll advertise it too. I'll take money. If any of these companies want to advertise on my show,
I think
I'll give me money and I'll tell people how good it's going to be.
Yeah.
I'll tell them how good it's going to be. You don't need a job. You don't need a job. In fact, once you don't have a job, you can really see what your potential is.
And the thing is, it's like the people who promoted the vaccine, people who didn't work, nobody knows what's happening.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It worked. You're allowed. Here's what it did do. It made people $1 trillion. That's not nothing.
It definitely worked there.
That's not nothing.
With the robot fans, it's like, yeah. Humans are in control.
Yeah.
But look, there's zero crime.
Here's the reality. If I was Pfizer, the CEO of Pfizer, do you people not like boats? Because I got a banging boat. So what the fuck's your problem?
I saw a boat today.
Yeah.
They have a helicopter that folds down into the boat.
Yeah.
You know how much money is that?
Crazy. Crazy.
When you go, like, you ever take a trip to an off coast?
Yeah.
You see these Steve Jobs guys.
They're crazy.
It's a giant Apple store.
Yeah.
A giant floating Apple store.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I was just this is crazy.
8 stores away in his boat. This dude literally has like a floating island.
I had Andrew Schultz texting me. He was in the mafia because he was on these amazing vacations, and I had my family in my house on Long Island. And then he would be at the Amalfi Coast, and I would just send him a photo of like my aunt complaining about the bugs.
What's up, my boy?
So many bags. Why? You know.
That's better than comedy.
Oh, we gonna win this one,
The Amalfi
bro.
Coast is probably not funny. I don't know, but I want to
Zero
go.
funny. You have to completely restart your phone.
I do want to go. Is it prettier than America? No. We gotta unite more because.
Listen, America is beautiful.
That's right.
But the best place
Bro,
in America
really?
we shouldn't even talk about it.
That's a good point. Because everybody got back from Italy. All my friends from Italy got back like they went to Italy. They're like, it's so much better than that. I'm like, shut up. Like, start like maybe that's true, but also like lie.
It's not better than America, but what it is fucking amazing. It's like, it's a great place to visit. I mean, what I want to live, Gore Vidal lived there. Gore Vidal used to write up in this fucking amazing house.
Yeah, you gotta be a novelist. The only way you could do it there is to be a novelist, because we need like friction, we need audiences and stuff.
Yeah, he needs.
Why do my 99 suck?
It's so pretty, man.
All
The
right.
food is fucking sensational. See if you can find Gore Vidal's house. Oh, you can rent it? Wow.
Can they hear me?
Stay in Morgendale's house.
That's pretty cool.
Look at this. That's him.
Yeah, that's good life.
Dude.
It's not bad.
Did you ever watch a documentary of him and
Buckley?
Yeah, William F. Buckley.
Yeah, a while ago.
It's like, I rewatched it.
I should rewatch it.
I rewatched it recently. It's really good, man.
I'll
It's so like what's going on today with the right and the left. And with them, it was like very transparent because people had to realize, like, to insult, use ad hominems,
right?
Insult
But they
each
were
other.
much more intellectual.
They were very intellectual,
I
but
mean,
also very combative.
Compared to what we have now, I mean, they were much more intellectual.
And then, William F. Buckley lost his cool.
Yeah.
And said something to him. But look, see if we find it.
Didn't he smack him or something? William F. Buckley
He said he would sock him.
Sock him or something?
Did he call him a queer? I think he called him a queer or something like that.
You queer.
Something
He did like that old English accent. It was still very proper. It's like, I'll shock you, you queer.
Yeah, they were insulting each other.
But it was like a high art when they did it.
Well, they were it was very combative.
All to
crypto-Nazi. That's right. Buckley, that's right. Because Orville called him a crypto-Nazi.
This is the most intellectual thing I've ever seen.
I'll sock you in your goddamn face and you'll stay plastered.
We haven't had a debate like that in years. Literally, our debates have degenerated into people on Twitter with the avatars and animals going, groomer, Nazi, groomer. I mean, this is like at least, these people are at least like functioning intellectuals.
There's zero likelihood that guy can kill you right now.
Who? William F. Buckley? You don't think so?
He lost his cool.
He lost his cool.
But they were insulting each other while disagreeing.
Well, debate was like an art form at that point.
It is. It's a thing though that I really feel like the way to do it. I've seen people do the debates with their 3 minutes to state a case. Like I watched the Monk debates recently. I watched this one with Douglas Murray and Malcolm Gladwell and a couple of people. And Matt Taibbi too. That's in one of the but you have like 3 minutes to say something, and then there's a rebuttal in that 3 minutes. And then sometimes they interrupt each other. Sometimes they just broke out into a conversation. But that's what I wanted.
Right.
I wanted a conversation. Like this idea that you should have 3 minutes. How about just give someone 3 minutes? Like you just you don't want anybody to dominate the conversation, not that other people speak their point of view, but if you can just like agree to like a gentleman's agreement. It's sort of like when people agree when they're sparring. They're not all yelling at each other. Let's just go in here and try with good faith.
Right.
You lay out what you think is correct, and I'll lay out my beliefs. And we'll try to figure out why I believe what I believe, and you believe what you believe. Detached as a human from them. The problem is we don't do that. We attach ourselves to every fucking idea we have. Whether it's ideas about politics, or ideas about social situations, or money, or capitalism, we attach ourselves to these ideas.
Yes.
And we defend them, and they are a part of our identity. That's where things get squirrely with people, because they're so fucking tribal. We get attached to ideologies that support this thing that we think of as us, as our worldview. And sometimes people switch. You know, those fucking lefties, I got red pill during the pandemic, and now I fucking have a frog flag in my living room. And
it's people, I think it's the desire for community, it's the desire for, some type of social standing, and people want to, we're lucky enough to have a thing that we like doing, that was challenging to do all the time, that there's never an end to it. You can always get better at it. You can always look at something and go, I wish that came out better and this was better. And I think that's a lucky thing to have. I don't think everybody has that. I think, there are people that are bored, very bored. And I think out of extreme boredom can come a lot of problems. Yeah. Idle time. It's kind of like, that is a good quote, like the devil's plaything. Like if you don't have something to do, into that vacuum can get thrown all kinds of things.
And well, a lot of people during the pandemic used it for good, right? They started a script, they fucking decided to start a workout routine and change their diet, they picked up skills, they learned the language. But not everybody has that mindset. And some people wallowed in Twitter. Just fought with everybody and called unvaccinated people plague rats and just wild shit, man. That's what it was.
It's trash.
And the isolation. I just love them around today, like, both guys are like, you're a plague rat. You're a plague rat, you queer. You plague rat queer. I'll suck you in your mouth. Suck you in your mouth. Bastard. Call me a rat. Yeah, I think that it's, you crypto Nazi. But it's funny, it's like two dudes that you live during a time. That's what's interesting. It's like, about all the other times, but you live in one particular time, and you might experience, like, there's a lot of things that happen in the span of any lifetime, for as long as it is, But, like, the way I think now versus in the way I thought 4 years ago changed dramatically, right? Because, like, so much happened in that period of time. So many new, ways to think about things. So many new weird things happened that you were like, oh, the things that you thought were impossible became possible. Yeah. The horror movie scenarios in your head that you had cooked up became reality. Right? All these things. So, it's definitely weird that there are people that, never lived during
the VC grind, my boy.
Any of the things that we went through were even really possible.
To the window.
And then kids, like, people will forget about it. Like, people that were 2 during the pandemic might always trust the government because they never lived through, like, this time of, like, massive government overreach and really sloppy
always going
science and, like, private and public fuckery, like, this weird unity between the private and the public sector, and these large profit-making institutions and all this stuff. So if you didn't live through it, you'll never appreciate it for how wild it was and how scary it was.
Do you know that there is a lot of people who are saying that their children have impaired speech because during the pandemic, they made them wear masks?
Interesting.
There's like, even if it's a certain percentage of the time when you're talking to someone, when you're a child, apparently, we should Google this and make sure it's true, but I believe what they think is that as you're talking to someone and you're reading their lips, there's like a thing going on where you see their expression and you get to read faces. Wow. You get to learn how to read them. And that this is a very critical part of development when you're a child.
For sure.
And if you're exposed to even a small percentage, I would imagine, of your interactions with people with shielded faces, you're not going to get any data from that. You're going to get this weird, like, thing. Masks can be detrimental to baby speech and language development. The good news is parents can take action to compensate. Well, I hope that's true. I hope you can compensate. My fear would be that there's certain stages where babies learn things, where, they're sort of developmental stages, and if that's one of them, where when they're really learning how to form their first words and have conversations with parents, that they're not seeing mouths and not seeing faces. That seems...
It's crazy.
And now that we find out that it didn't work, the whole thing is so insane. There was a study recently, see if you can find this, we brought this up the other day, but we never Googled it, that wearing an N95 mask, you should never wear one for more than an hour a day.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's going to come out now that'll be the complete opposite of what we were told to do.
Yeah, there's apparently some other health risks.
So many cons.
Of course.
All the time. Especially when I was
Yeah.
we're spending this fucking
I mean,
thing
just
with
like I remember during, this whole thing, all those TikTok kids get really famous in LA, and like, it's amazing that TikTok, which is an app, right, started by China, the people that would started this app were very open about what they were going to do. They were like, we're going to take 20 kids, make them famous, make them icons, because we think in the early stages of any social media app, having majorly famous people on it brings more people into it, right?
Right.
So these kids that were just running around LA got famous because somewhere in the room in like Shanghai or Beijing, where they were choosing who would play to America, like the Charlie D'Amelio girls, like like the girl next door with brown hair and brown, and they're just like, okay, we're gonna make all these people famous. Like, this is a real interesting period of time to have lived through, where like while you have all this government overreach and stuff like that, you have this landscape that's being completely curated in ways you don't know about. You don't understand what's happening because like people are being chosen, in rooms in China to be famous, and like, nobody knew, about, Anthony Fauci really until he became the czar of public health. Right? Some people in the government knew who he was. It was just a weird time. It's strange how a lot of things were changing. All of the technology had, then they were like, wait a minute, is this good? Is it good that we have this app that China has access to all of this information, right? That we have. I'm like, so that was a huge thing during the pandemic too. TikTok exploded during the pandemic. It's very interesting. All these things that happened in that period of time are interesting things. They're all interesting things.
Yeah, it's a new sort of era of human beings, like a totally new chapter.
Yeah.
Like a weird chapter where nobody trusts the government, nobody trusts the media, nobody trusts. This is not people that don't trust election machines, they don't trust politicians, they don't trust congresspeople, they don't trust the cops.
Nobody trusts anything.
Oh. And it's
I'm
also
trust you.
Right. How many years from now before we're plugged into something?
I don't know. Most people's minds I don't want to read. They can keep their mind.
When you find out that like a master human someone found their chronic.
Well, that's
I need that B plus.
But also, how many husbands and wives have those thoughts that pass through their head, like, I should kill them?
Right.
And then they never do.
Yeah, they just like to entertain themselves.
How many people just like to... Yeah, some people probably have fantasies about killing their significant other. Maybe that's good.
But what if you know the plot?
Right. Well, look at the Gilgo Beach guy, right? This woman slept next to this guy, lived in her house. He's killing hookers and burying them on a Long Island beach. He's like this regular Massapequa dad, walking around, going to bars, telling people about the murders because he wants to be cool. Oh, I know about those people. You know what? How it probably happened? It's like that OJ book he released, If I Did It. This guy's going to bars in Long Island. Going, yeah, this is probably gonna have people getting creeped out. Like, he seems to know a lot about this.
Oh my God! So they suspected him before?
Well, they were watching. They were watching him for a while, and then
he was always talking about it.
He was always talking about it, and like they had a few other things, DNA, technological things. He implicated himself with DNA on like a pizza box or something, and then they got him. But again, this was a guy who's had 2 kids and a wife.
Like his wife's hair, like the
Something, I don't know.
I think one of his wife's hairs.
That's interesting. I don't know.
I think see if you find out. Because I think that was one of the ways they found.
But that's so weird that then she's like, oh, my husband's going to the beach murdered. Yeah, the daughter. But my whole attitude is it kind of like makes you cool a little bit. Like, it makes you important a little bit. Like, you could kind of, like, they won't even visit him. And my whole thing is like, if my dad killed a bunch of hookers, I visit him every day. I think you're so much more interesting than I thought. Like, I love my dad. But if my dad was like a serial killer, I'm like, what is going on? It'd be amazing. I feel bad for the people who kill. But it would be fascinating. Dude, it would be amazing.
If you could have a conversation with your
Oh my God, he wasn't just my father wasn't just talking about his dog.
What were you saying? What were you trying to get
His wife's hair.
His wife's hair was found at the scene of the crime, or one of the crimes. I think
But that's the thing about the suburbs. People have these weird hidden lives, and his was that he was a murderer.
Bro, what is it? Look at this, bro.
In the suburbs, everybody looks, it's very, there's a lot of conformity.
Hair believed to be from the Gilgo Beach suspect's wife found near victims.
Wow.
Authorities said once Rex Huerman was identified in early 2022 as a suspect. They watched him and his family collected DNA samples from items that were thrown away.
I'd love to hear why. When these, why did he do it? But I guess it's just he was bored. He's like, I'm an evil guy and I'm bored. And I need something to do.
There's people that hate themselves.
Yes.
And they want to do something awful.
Yes.
And he wants to get away with it too. He was steal things like Winona Ryder was shoplifting. She's rich. Why would she do that? Because they want to get away with it. It's a thrill. It's like a crazy thrill.
It's a thrill. It's a thrill.
Yeah, it's a psychological.
Well, Stranger Things got it back on the bike. She was great. She was really good. She was really good. Keep stealing. Good for her. Who's getting hurt by that? CVS? But it is strange when somebody, has a hidden life. And it's crazy.
I found a bunch of stuff Googling about the 95.
Well, you could feel when you wore those masks, it wasn't good because you breathe in your own carbon dioxide.
It says like you can wear it up to about 8 hours usually. But
What was this one that was saying?
I was trying to find specifically what it was. This article, before I get further into it, says this blog is specifically about respirators and not face masks. But it does say here, when the workers are working longer hours without a break while continuously wearing an N95 FFR,
Alright, y'all, let's play some,
blood CO2 levels may increase past
play
1
some
hour.
Fortnite.
Which could have a significant physiological effect on the wearer. Something that
Yo, I'm tripping. I'm tripping. The Montgomery Brawl. Juju Kaisen. Juju Kaisen. Juju Kaisen. Oh, hold up, bro. Hold up. Juju Kaisen.
So you think?
I don't think.
And this.
If you think the United States should be supporting Ukraine in the fight against Putin, raise your hand. Nobody.
You don't have to be that smart to connect the dots, right? And so, is the war to cover up sins committed so you can cover your tracks?
CNN sucks. CNN sucks.
Known physiological effects of increased concentration of CO2 include headache, increased pressure inside the skull, nervous system changes. IG, increased pain threshold, reduction in cognition, altered judgment, decreased situational awareness, difficulty coordinating sensory or cognitive abilities and motor activity, decreased visual acuity, widespread activism of sympathetic nervous system that can oppose the direct effects of CO2 on the heart and blood vessels, increased breathing frequency, increased work of breathing, which is a result of breathing through a filter medium, cardiovascular effects, example, diminished cardiac contractility, vasodilation of peripheral blood vessels, reduced tolerance to lighter workloads. So that's not good.
That's just known effects of breathing.
Yeah, increased concentrations of CO2, which can happen if you have a face mask on when you're
Yeah.
See, you know, the people wore those fuckers all day long. How many people got really fucked up from those things? There's people that were wearing them outside the park. You know, I saw
crazy.
So many people outside in LA wearing those things. It's like but they got fucking brainwashed.
Right.
They got brainwashed and they didn't get good information on what can be done to make your body more resilient.
But you know, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's like I think people learned, even the people that are not disclosing that.
There's a lot of people.
Here's also,
A lot of people now are just kind of
reference. That FFR. What I just looked it up.
Mm-hmm.
FFR means a filtering face piece respirator. When I Google that, it's like that. It's a giant face mask. It's not just a face mask.
But people had those too. So
Well, that's insane. Okay, that's a different story. That's not an N95. That's a fucking Darth Vader mask.
Yeah,
but those are kind of cooler.
That's a lot different. That's a lot different. That probably does a way better job of keeping all the cooties out, but
yeah,
it's probably fucks you up because that's why you're getting so much CO2. Because the thing about those N95s, not just N95s, but the thing about specifically like surgical masks. Have you ever seen that doctor that does this test where he takes a vape pen and he takes a big hit and he blows it through the face mask and he explains that the size of the vapor that's going through the face mask is far larger than the COVID bacteria, or the COVID virus rather. So when you're breathing out, it's going right through that goddamn thing. Like some of the aspects of those N95, or was it KN95? One of maybe both of them. There's like sort of an electrical charge to that kind of fabric, right? And it captures some of the stuff.
Yeah.
It stops some of it from getting in.
Yeah.
So they might have a beneficial effect.
Well, it's a lot. It was a mask, right? It was a big mask.
People were wearing bullshit. They were wearing like fucking the same face diaper every day.
It was a big mask. And you know what? It'll be forgotten by people. Like, we'll remember it, and people our age will remember it. And younger
Did you know
than
that
us.
they wore them in 1918 during the Spanish flu?
I did not.
Yeah, they wore them. There was I didn't know either.
Yeah.
Until this pandemic, I saw these photos of like the 1918s. Yeah. People walking down the streets with face masks on.
Hopefully we're done with pandemics for a while and we could just be killed by all the machines.
Well, Biden said there's going to be another pandemic.
Well, they want one, but
I don't know if he misspoke.
Yeah,
it was one of those.
Do we need money?
There's going to be another pandemic.
I want machines to kill us. I'm bored with pandemics. I'd rather the machines rise, just to be more fun.
I don't think you have a choice.
Yeah, I think it'd be more fun to just see a bunch of AI sentient robots trying to kill everybody. If we're gonna go, let's just do full Terminator. Let's go. If it's gonna happen, the pandemics are boring. We've done that as hack.
It's scary. The pandemic's scary because it may have been started by people.
It probably was. They were fucking around in that lab. They were trying
likely, it got out. They
trying to get more money.
Some of the researchers got sick. They all had COVID-like symptoms. It seems like they know what happened.
They were trying to get more money, showing the government, go, look, what if this happened? What if that happened?
And it's also funding. So if you can do this
and
research,
it's probably fun. Like, that's what's fucked up about it. If your job is to create diseases all day, you're probably like, let's create something fun where you don't know you have it for 12 days. Then we go show the government that and go, look how scary this one is. You better fund us now. You better give us all the money because we have this crazy new disease. Because that's all they do.
Yeah.
Is they just manipulate these diseases to make them more dangerous so they can get more money.
That's what it is. It's for funding.
Yeah.
But obviously they didn't have a fucking cure.
Yeah.
Right? So how long you been working on this thing?
Yeah.
How long you been fucking doing these weird science projects on bugs? What do you like? What is this mosquito thing I keep hearing about? Where they're trying to figure out a way to have
Gates is trying to
vaccinate people.
Well, the mosquitoes.
No bullshit.
Yeah, no, they're trying to have mosquitoes like they're. Bill Gates, I think, wants to own all the mosquitoes in the world. And I don't know why, but I think it's good.
Could you fucking imagine?
I think he's good. He just wants to own all the farmland and all the mosquitoes.
Imagine if they genetically engineer mosquitoes.
Is that what's happening?
No. I mean, I'm just guessing. I think I've heard that, but I don't know what forum. See if that's real. Have they genetically engineered the mosquitoes? Could they potentially?
Is Bill Gates trying to vaccinate me with a wasp?
Well, the first thought was like, we're going to genetically engineer mosquitoes that can't carry malaria. That'll
Right.
save so many lives. Oh, go right ahead. CYVZIKV could replicate efficiently in mosquitoes and be secreted in saliva, they said. By feeding mosquitoes blood that contained the CYVZIKV virus, the insects were transformed into a vaccine carrier.
Awesome.
Zhang's team then tested the effectiveness of their new vaccine on mice.
So every time you just hit your leg, you're like, I got a booster. I'm getting boosted now.
Jeez Louise, what are these people doing? That is the wildest thing that the world hasn't stepped in and just said, stop all this fucking gain of function shit,
Because it
you
makes
assholes.
a lot of money. You know, like,
Scientists were able to genetically modify parasites to deliver malaria vaccines through mosquito bites. Holy shit, dude. We use the mosquitoes like they're 1,000 small flying syringes, explains University of Washington Seattle physician and scientist Dr. Sean Murphy, lead author of the paper.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Bro.
That's crazy. Well, it's also crazy that Gates wants to own all the farmland and stuff. People that make $1 billion, a lot of them just don't want to chill with $1 billion. You know, when you're a little kid, you're like, if I
had 100+ billion.
I know, but it doesn't matter anymore. He wants like people to do everything he says. Like when you were a little kid, you're like, if I had money, I'd just put a water slide from my bedroom to the pool, right?
Yeah.
That's like what you're a little kid idea. I'd have a fast car, and I'd have a fucking jungle gym in my whatever it is. Then as you grow older, you go, okay, I'll have a mansion and a couple of things. Then you're like, I'll get to fuck all the hot bitches or whatever it is you think money's gonna get, right?
Right.
But at that level, you're like, I want to own all the mosquitoes, and I want them to vaccinate people on my command. It goes so crazy. You have so many resources that you are a Batman villain. You've become this like all-powerful. He's a country. Bill Gates has the resources, and not a small country. He has the resources and the political power of a country.
If they release those vaccine-carrying mosquitoes, there would be people out there who would be bug catchers, where they're trying to go get stung up as much as possible, so they can be free of any worry of diseases.
Well, there'd also be people.
standing there.
There'd also be like clinics in LA and Beverly Hills we could go and just get stung.
Yeah, for sure.
And they would put it on your skin, you'd get stung.
Did you guys get stung?
Yeah,
I
I
got
get stung.
today. Yeah.
Stung, stingers.
Oh my God. It's so itchy, but it works. Doesn't work. Of the 14 participants who were exposed to malaria, 7 of them, including Reed, came down with the disease, meaning the vaccine was only 50% effective.
Oh, that's better than the COVID one. That's fine. That's fine.
For the other 7,
50%?
the COVID is fucking terrible.
No, 50%. They will.
Yeah.
That is successful for these people.
Yeah, it's a lot.
50% is a home run.
For the other 7, protection didn't last more than a few months. Oh, so.
Sounds like you got to get stung every couple of months.
Every few months, you need a new booster.
You need to get stung.
Booster stung.
It
I
is
actually
more
cried
fun
when
way
they told
to
me I
get
had malaria because
Yeah.
I developed such a close relationship with the nurses, Reed said. She wanted to continue through the trials, but her infection made her ineligible. She was given a drug to clear her case of malaria and sent home. I think you can obviously do better. Oh my God,
They want to get stung.
But isn't the real solution to malaria? They need to, like, we had malaria in America at one point in time. There was a lot of standing water.
You know what the solution is? Shopping malls, condos, buildings, roads.
Right.
It's go buy jungles.
Yeah.
Stop with this crap. The real solution is Famous Dave's, Dave and Buster's, KFC. That's
Probably
the
also
solution.
Hygiene. You know, running water.
Sure.
Sewage systems that are functional.
But you don't get malaria in a mall.
Right.
You don't get it in a hotel. You get it in a forest or a
You
swamp
get it from
or whatever.
mosquitoes, right? But how do mosquitoes get it?
They
'Cause
get
they
it.
don't all have it, right?
They get it in those really hot swampy areas, a lot of stagnant water.
Right, but how are they getting it? Like, how are the mosquitoes getting malaria?
I don't know.
You know what I'm saying? Because, like, it's not all
They
mosquitoes.
carry it? Do some of them just carry it?
Right. So this is like, let's Google that. Like, what's the origin of malaria?
They carry it.
Where do they get it from?
Where do they get it?
Like what? Like a person or a thing?
Another person or an animal.
Or a hog,
Interesting.
maybe one of those hogs.
Oh, those dirty pigs.
They spread a lot of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of animals that have some funky ass diseases.
So those vaccinations are good when you're going, like, I'm sure they're good in a lot of cases, but they're also good if you're going to, like, some of those countries where it's, like, bad.
One time.
Oh, malaria spread when an infected Anopheles mosquito bites a person. This is the only type of mosquito that can spread malaria. The mosquito becomes infected by biting an infected person, drawing blood that contains the parasite. When that mosquito bites another person, that person becomes infected. Our friend Justin got malaria 3 times.
Yeah, that's the guy for Fight for the Forgotten with the well.
He got malaria and then it came back. He was like depleted and it came back. Like,
Well,
it's
isn't
still
he's trying to
somewhere
give,
in
like,
the
people
system.
water, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, stop doing that. That's the problem. That's the issue. No, good for him for doing it, and that's an occupational hazard.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, he got rocked with a bunch of different things. Some sort of parasite at one point in time really fucked him up for months and months. There's a lot of people go over there and they get exotic things and they don't even exactly know what you got infected with.
Well, that's the thing about. I've always wanted to visit the Amazon rainforest in Brazil, but then there's some really wacky stuff you could just get, and some people don't even know what it is. Some people come back from that 5 years later have an issue. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there was a case real recently of someone getting infected by a parasite or a bacteria that they had not identified before.
Right.
Like a new one.
Well, that's the thing about those areas, and that's what makes them so cool. Is that they're there's areas in the Brazilian Amazon that are, uncontacted tribes and unexplored.
I had Paul Rosley on.
Yeah.
He's the guy that goes down there and he's like working to try to preserve these areas and protect them. And what they do is they wind up hiring loggers to now protect the forest.
Right.
They don't have any fucking job. Of course. They can hire them to do something good. That's what they want to do.
Right.
They'd much rather do that. So they do that now. They've protected like a shitload of the
There's
Amazon
regions
rainforest.
of the Amazon that are just impenetrable or crazy.
He was talking about his encounters with some of the natives. It's wild.
That's
shit.
crazy.
Where he at one point in time, he thinks they were hunting him.
Really?
Yeah. He like peeked around. He saw someone with face paint on with a bow and arrow. And he said, "Oh my God!" He realized he was surrounded. When he got out of there.
That's so crazy.
Whoa! They just fucking kill people.
Right.
And they find people encroaching because they've been killed. I mean, there's been like war going on between people that are like.
But if you go down there, could you become their god? Could you convince them you were a god?
If you had like sufficient fireworks.
That's the thing. Like if you went down there and were like,
yeah,
I'm your god.
They would shoot arrows at you still. They would
Still.
try it out. Yeah. They wouldn't believe it. They don't know your language. You don't know theirs. So good luck learning.
That's the problem.
Some Amazonian tribal language.
Yeah. But if you went down there with like some phones and crazy stuff, they might think you were a demon.
Floodlights.
Christopher Columbus used the eclipse, supposedly.
Oh yeah, supposedly.
Yeah.
He told them the eclipse was coming. They all bowed down.
That's powerful if you know that shit.
That's a dope move.
It's
They
a
knew shit
killer
back then,
move.
and they were doing that little sextant in the sky thing. That's how they fucking knew it. I mean, imagine making your way across the ocean, just looking at the
Yeah.
stars through this thing.
And then just landing and going, hey, I know something's coming, and then predicting it, and then having them go, oh, this guy must be a god. He must be plugged in.
And you kind of can't do that anymore.
No.
Because the light from the planet, from all the cities and everything, it's like significant pollution. Stops you from seeing the stars. Unless you're like, wait, what the fuck out
Also,
there?
their immune systems have been exposed to very little, so they could die from like nothing, from like a cold, right? Because like
that's what killed most of the Native
Yeah.
Americans. 90% of the Native Americans who died of like smallpox. Smallpox.
So it wasn't us.
No.
That's what got them stuck
But
there.
didn't we give them blankets of
Marine
smallpox?
Marine worms got them stuck. In 1504, Christopher Columbus, on his 4th transatlantic voyage, had been stranded with his men on the north coast of Jamaica, their last 2 ships riddled with marine worms. So marine worms are worms that eat wood. So they eat through boats. So having said a small part of Spanish occupied
Oh, dark.
Advertising country, so he's an asset in Nigeria. One typically intimate meeting with Tinubu ended with the U.S. ambassador to Nigeria commenting, "As always, we found his take on a national political scene to be insightful." So again, he's the guy providing intelligence. In 2009, Tinubu came under investigation by the Metropolitan Police of London, who were probing allegations that the politician had pooled money from 2 other Nigerian governors to create a front company known as the African Development Fund Incorporation. Investigators allege the unusual business arrangement was actually a joint effort to illegally acquire shares of Econet, a telecommunications firm founded by U.S. intelligence asset and Gates Foundation trustee Strive Masiyiwa. So 2 U.S. assets, one of them being a Gates Foundation asset, are being investigated by the Metropolitan Police of London for some money games. Right? Now let's continue. It says, but attempts to probe the legitimacy of the transactions in question was sidelined when the Nigerian federal government stonewalled the British investigation, which ultimately concluded without a single arrest. To this day, Nigerian authorities have yet to release the evidence requested by the authorities. So really what you have here is Nigeria being the most powerful African nation is basically an asset of the West. So it's like, you don't have to control every leader in Africa, but if you control the biggest, then, you know, it's probably go along with. Continues in 2011. Tinubu was tried before the Code of Conduct Tribunal in Nigeria for illegally operating 16 foreign bank accounts. Eager to avoid the embarrassment he previously suffered when being photographed in court, ECOWAS chair reportedly refused to take his place at the dock in a judicial hearing. But the unwelcome attention appears to have done little to rein in the politician's extravagant taste. And Tinubu once again found himself embroiled in a corruption scandal following an investigation into the luxurious 7,000 square foot mansion where the Nigerian president stays when receiving medical care in London. So he goes to Europe for medical care. According to Nigerian outlet Premium Times, the massive villa in London's exclusive Westminster borough was picked up for a song by Tinubu's son, who somehow managed to purchase the property at a discount of approximately $10 million from a wealthy figure, even though the seller's assets, including the mansion in question, have been frozen by a Nigerian court. Okay? So why did I highlight that? I just wanted to highlight that because we're talking about limousine living. And the people closest higher up in government are going to enjoy the greatest lifestyle. This is why people who love communism are stupid, because what's going to happen is we're going to have equality of the rest of us, but we're going to have equality of the poor, and everybody in government is going to be eating lobster and steak. Meanwhile, you're going to be eating fucking lab-grown meat. You're not even going to get bugs. You're going to wish you had some bugs, you're going to get lab-grown meat. Okay? Bugs are going to be great form of diet compared to what they're going to feed you. And that's why they got you guys hating it now. See, y'all stupid. I know y'all. You know, right-wing motherfuckers fall for fucking propaganda real easy. So they tell you you're going to be eating bugs. You guys, oh my God, they're going to have you eating bugs. No, you won't. No, you won't. That's fucking propaganda designed to turn your brain stupid. Bugs are a high form of protein. In fact, they got a lot of farms doing that shit now. The motherfuckers always talk about loving meat and protein and shit. You don't know shit from shit. But they got bug farms right now where you gonna wish you had a bug burger. You won't even have that. So they're gonna get you to hate the bug diet so that when the bug diet becomes premium, you're gonna look stupid because you're gonna be like, well, I spent all my time on Twitter X talking about bugs and bad. I don't wanna look like a hypocrite now, so I'm gonna eat this lab-grown meat. Uneducated motherfuckers. Anyway, while ECOWAS was officially founded via the Treaty of Lagos in 1975, its official history notes the bloc's origins date back to the creation of CIFA Frank in 1945. This is what the brother with the super chat was talking about. Let me get his name right, out of respect. Cuban libertarian. We're getting into your commentary now. Which consolidated France's Western Empire into a single currency union. Now I'm gonna come back to this. Publicly, the move was described as a benevolent attempt to shield these colonies from the consequences of the French sharp devaluation in 1945, following the creation of the U.S.-dominated Bretton Woods Agreement. Now, if you've read my book, The Patriot Report, you should be very familiar with the Bretton Woods Agreement and all the gold and Nixon and all of that shit. So if you haven't gotten a copy of my book, get a copy. HotepJesus.com.
Hotep, you're a genius. HotepJesus.com.
Now let's come back. Okay, so now we want to revisit this point here. Single currency union. What does it say here? It wanted to consolidate France's West African Empire into a single currency union. Okay? Now, let's come back to my profile. Of my tweet a few days ago in regards to the CBDC. And I've been trying to tell people this before, but I don't have all of my theories put together yet. All of my arguments put together yet. I just know when something's wrong. So now, before I even had, received this article, what did I say? I said the events in Niger and Ecuador are all preparation for a CBDC. I'll explain on the Griff Report, and I touched on this the other day. But now we have more information corroborating my theory. What this is about is a consolidation of the Western world's empire. Under what? A single currency. Alex Jones has spoken about this one world currency for a long time. So when people talk about Africa and they're saying, oh, China's colonizing Africa, they certainly are. Will not deny that. But the Western world is still doing that today. And what these coups are, in my own estimations, are to replace certain leaders, create turmoil in the place, and lock down their empire with a one world digital currency, or one Western world digital currency. China will have their citizens and their satellites, their colonies under one currency, and the West will have one under one currency. And there will be two major currencies. You have the CBDC of the Western world, and you have the CBDC of the Eastern world. And you're starting to see that coalesce with BRICS, right? Seeing all the BRICS nations, and people are like, oh my God, BRICS is threatening the United States. I'm like, no, that's not exactly what's happening. Although you're partly correct, that's not exactly what's happening. What's happening is the people that sit atop the world at this table have said, look, we got to figure out whose colonies are your colonies and my colonies are my colonies. So what we're going to do is we're going to sort this out using currency. And then now to let you know who is truly your colony and who's not. Because simply having a military installment is not enough. And it shows that right here, because in 1945, it said the West, France, wanted to consolidate their West African empire into a single currency union. Let's go into that. It says, in a show of her generosity and selflessness, metropolitan France, wishing not to impose on her faraway daughters the consequences of her own poverty, is setting different exchange rates for their currency, right? So they make it seem like this is some good thing, right? And they make it seem like, oh, all right, we'll get into that. I don't know what happened. I'll show you in a minute what I was going to say, but it'll come up in the conversation later in the article. In reality, the introduction of the CFA franc meant that Paris was able to maintain unequal trading relationships with its African colonies. At a time when its economy was ravaged by World War II and its overseas empire was rapidly disintegrating, the currency made it cheap for member states to import from France and vice versa. But prohibitively expensive for them to export anything anywhere else. So obviously you see here, you're getting robbed. Africa's getting robbed. And this is what we're talking about, the franc. This forced dependency on the francophone West Africa created a captive market for the French and by extension, the rest of Europe. And that'll make sense too as you begin to understand the Bretton Woods Agreement. That dynamic, which has stunted regional economic development for decades, persists to this day. The CFA franc's continued dominance ensures Western African states remain under the economic and political control of France. So just because, we've removed boots from the ground or whatever other presence we have, we are still going to maintain economic and political control because of the money that we transact. It says here, those African nations are powerless to enact meaningful policy change as they lack control over their own monetary policy. Now, I believe Adam Weishaupt or somebody to the effect has said, if you let me control a nation's currency, I don't care who makes its laws. So it says here that the currency features so prominently in the advertised history of ECOWAS is instructive because the bloc has been criticized as an extension of French imperialism, which it is. It was not for nothing that in 1960, then French President Charles de Gaulle made membership of the CFA franc a precondition for what? Decolonization of Africa. And I've said this before, say it again. All these nations, including America, celebrate something called Independence Day. And I always ask myself, because of the world banking structure, who the fuck are you independent of? You're not independent. You're not independent. You're not celebrating independence. All you're doing is getting dressed up and pretending like you free, but you not. But I don't want to destroy your festivities. You want to dress your women up half naked and have them dance around with feathers in their head and shit like that. Fucking so be it. I don't give a fuck. Have fucking fun. I'm always here for a good fucking party. But let's not lie to ourselves. Because it's, I said this on the phone with the homie the other day. I said, it's one thing to lie. But when you lie to yourself, you definitely gone. You're lost. I know some people can't help but to lie to other people. But pathological liars are such big liars, I think they actually lie to themselves too. And that's a real fucking bad problem. When you lie to yourself. And that's what people do, they fucking lie to themselves. Okay? So, in finality, Charles de Gaulle says we would decolonize Africa, but you gotta use our money. Which I ask you, chat, is that actually decolonization? It's not. It's not. It's a trick. It's a ruse. It's hoodwinkery. It's deception. It's there was another word I was trying to think of. It'll come back to me. But that's what this is. Duplicitousness. Duplicitousness. What's that word? It's duplicitous. Is duplicitousness a word? I don't know if duplicitousness is a word. But it's duplicity. It's duplicitous. Okay? That's what it is. It's duplicitous. Let's go back. I'm sorry. I get caught up on my vocabulary. Now it says down here, as President Jacques Chirac remarked in 2008, without Africa, France will slide down into the rank of a third world power. Europe can't live on its own, bro. Europe has always needed Africa in order to survive. It has always needed America to survive.
Dude, I fucking suck, bro. I'm a fucking sucker. Oh. Bro, I think I suck, bro. Alright, y'all. I'll catch y'all later. Peace.